Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by the following. Indiana University's Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research, presenting Security Matters with tips for improving online security in 3 minutes or less. Main Source Bank, headquartered in Greensburg, Indiana, offering products and services to fit every stage of life. More information at mainsourcebank.com. Main Source, life needs a great bank. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Smithville Communications, serving Southern Indiana with high-speed fiber gigabit internet. Smithville Fiber Gigabit Technology. Tap the power.
And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk.
By the power invested in me, in accordance with the laws of the state of Indiana, I now pronounce you married.
A judge strikes down Indiana's ban on same-sex marriage, and people across the state rush to the altar.
Hour and a half ago we were in meetings and you were at lunch, and now we're here and married.
We'll introduce you to couples who've been together for decades and are celebrating a moment they thought would never happen.
I make you my husband.
Meanwhile, the Attorney General's office is pushing for a stay on the judge's decision. What could happen to the hundreds of couples married this week? We'll talk to a legal expert about the possible outcomes. Our comprehensive coverage of this week's decision, plus a look at other news making headlines right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Hello and welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Sarah Whitmire, and tonight for Joe Wren. Indiana's ban on same-sex marriage is unconstitutional. That's the ruling a federal court judge issued this week. The court order has many implications, not only for same-sex couples, but for all Hoosiers. This evening, we're going to try to explain the potential short-term and long-term impacts. We begin with the lawsuit itself. In March, dozens of same-sex couples sued county and state officials for the right to marry. 1 month later, Judge Richard Young ordered the state to recognize the out-of-state marriage of one same-sex couple because one of the women is terminally ill with ovarian cancer. At that time, he said he would rule soon on the larger case. This week, he did just that. On Wednesday, the judge ruled in favor of those couples, granting them something many of them thought they would never have: the right to marry. Tara Betterman and Melanie Lane are two of the plaintiffs. They were previously married in New York, but wanted their marriage to be recognized in their home state of Indiana.
We were ecstatic to be married, but we drove home from there that November in 2012, and every state we went over, we said, are we married here? Are we not married here? Are we married here? Are we not married here? And so when we got home, it's validating.
Yeah, it's validating, but now. When we got home, it was kind of depressing.
It was very depressing.
Yeah, it was a completely, there was a sort of freedom that we felt when we were in New York that we didn't feel before now here.
Judge Richard Young's opinion was strong, saying this court has no trepidation that marriage is a fundamental right to be equally enjoyed by all individuals of consenting age, regardless of their race, religion, or sexual orientation. Later in the order, he says the state's laws place same-sex marriages in a second-class category, unlike other marriages performed in other states. Thus, like the Supreme Court in Windsor, this court can conclude that this law is motivated by animus, thus violating the Equal Protection Clause. The other states the judge mentions are key. In fact, Judge Young called the recent wave of court cases ruling in favor of a same-sex marriage a phenomenon the court has never witnessed before. It's clear that the fundamental right to marry shall not be deprived to some individuals based solely on the person they choose to love, Judge Young writes. In time, Americans will look at the marriage of couples such as plaintiffs and refer to it simply as a marriage, not a same-sex marriage. The other court opinions that have been issued in Utah, Texas, and Oklahoma, just to name a few, are also what gave attorneys on the case confidence they would win.
As the judge himself noted in his decision, this is one of many decisions that have been issued recently striking down these type of limitations, and we certainly were very optimistic that Indiana would fall in line, and we're very happy that Indiana has done so.
The Indiana Attorney General's office argued on behalf of the state and has already asked that the court order be put on hold pending an appeal. The motion reads, until the United States Supreme Court determines that traditional marriage laws such as Indiana's are unconstitutional, it's premature to require Indiana to change its definition of marriage and abide by this court's conception of marriage. Even though everything came to a head this week, the debate over Indiana's marriage laws have been building up for several years. To talk to us more about how we got to this week's decision, we now go to State House reporter Brandon Smith, who's joining us from the Capitol in Indianapolis. Thanks for joining us, Brandon. These lawsuits were filed in March after the 2014 legislative session concluded. H.J.R. 3, which would have amended the state's constitution to define marriage solely as a union between a man and a woman, failed. Did that push for a state constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriage really hasten this ruling?
I don't think it hastened it too much. Everybody on both sides of this debate kind of agreed, even before H.J.R. 3, that this was going to go to the courts no matter what happened with that marriage amendment in this legislative session. So I don't really think it hastened it all that much. This was coming regardless.
Brandon, do you know what impact the ruling will have on lawmakers' efforts to try and continue to add a gay marriage ban into the state's constitution?
Well, the process will work that in order to put the amendment into the Constitution, they have to act on it either next session in 2015 or in 2016. And even before this ruling this week, legislative leaders like Senate President Pro Tem David Long had said that they were probably going to take a wait-and-see approach because they think it's going to end up, this issue is going to end up in the U.S. Supreme Court. So we'll kind of see what happens there before we make any decisions here.
And we know Governor Pence is a well-known supporter of so-called traditional marriage, and he's opposed same-sex marriage. Can you talk about how he's been involved in this case and his reaction now? He was one of the state officials sued by the same-sex couples who brought this lawsuit, but the judge ruled that the governor's office isn't involved in licensing marriage in the state of Indiana, so the judge actually removed Pence from the case. That being said, after the ruling, Pence did issue a statement that you could almost call middle of the road. He criticized the decision and said he supports Attorney General Greg Zeller appealing it, but also said the state would comply with the court order as far as it went. Okay, Brandon, thank you very much. Shocked, overjoyed, ecstatic, those are just a few of the words people were using this week to describe what it was like to marry their partner of 5 years, 10 years, 20 plus years. When Judge Young handed down his ruling this week, it was a bit of chaos as same-sex couples across the state rushed to their county clerk's office to get married. In some cases, clerks didn't know if the ruling applied to their county and they turned people away. But hundreds of couples across the state have exchanged vows. Gretchen Frazee has more.
Consider your own wedding. Maybe months of planning, choosing a dress, picking out rings, flowers, a caterer, and then compare that to the scene across the state Wednesday. Hundreds of couples took their lunch hour to rush to their county clerk's office and get married.
Jake texted me and said, "Do you want to get married?" And I thought he was joking, and I hadn't heard the news yet.
Jake Miller and his partner Craig Bowen were the first to get married in Marion County. There were no rings, there wasn't a lavish ceremony.
We've been talking for a very long time about getting married, so we said we were going to wait until it was legal in Indiana, and then when it was, we didn't wait a second.
The Marion County Clerk's office stayed open late Wednesday to accommodate all the couples who waited in line to exchange their vows.
We talked about going to New York, thought about Illinois, disappointed we couldn't have family and friends with us, but we've talked a lot about how we would do that anyway, having a party, something like that when we got back, so we kind of solved that today.
A mutual friend introduced Bart Peterson and Pete McNamara more than 2 decades ago. They hoped this day would come, but they didn't think it would happen this soon.
Bart, with this ring, I make you my husband. It will be a sign of my love and fidelity.
We're just married all of a sudden. We don't even know what to think.
We have no idea what's next. Hour and a half ago we were in meetings and you were at lunch, and now we're here and married.
It was the same thing for Sarah Perfetti and Abby Hinkle in Bloomington. They were both at work when Sarah got an AP alert on her phone. they could get married.
So we're like, well, I guess if we go, maybe it'll work out. And we were the second ones to get here.
When Reverend Mary Ann Macklin heard the news, she wrapped up the meeting she was in at her church and rushed to the clerk's office.
Right now I'm standing here for every couple who comes out here and wants to get married.
Reverend Macklin married about a dozen couples Wednesday on the courthouse steps.
This feels like part of a moment, I feel like. I mean, in addition to just like being married like 2 minutes from our house, it just feels like we're part of something big and people are coming, everyone's so excited. Other gay couples are getting married today and it just feels like, I don't know, I can't describe it. It's beautiful.
In a couple of months, Hinkle and Perfetti will have a big wedding with more than 275 invited guests.
And our plan was to have our legal wedding with just our immediate family in Chicago a couple days before that. But we've always wanted to be married in Indiana. I mean, this is our dream.
But more than 24 counties did not immediately begin issuing marriage licenses. The reasons ran the gamut. Some opposed the ruling on moral grounds. Others weren't sure whether the ruling applied to their county, so clerks opted to wait until they received guidance from the Attorney General's office.
We were waiting for direction because, yes, we received news media that this law had been changed. However, we didn't receive direction from anybody else.
Late Wednesday, the Attorney General's office sent a letter to the county clerks. It read, for those county clerks that were named, Hamilton, Allen, Boone, Porter, Lake, in the cases ruled upon today, please be aware that you must comply with the court's ruling or be subject to contempt of court. Other county clerks are not under the direct jurisdiction of the court order, but as an officer of the court, we must encourage everyone to show respect for the judge and the orders that are issued. But even as offices around the state reopened for business Thursday morning, not all were issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples. Nearly 24 hours after the ruling and multiple denials for licenses from the clerk, gay couples and supporters in Bartholomew County arranged a protest at the courthouse.
Yesterday, it was devastating. It was, we came here not expecting her to say no, which may have been naive. But once we got over that, we became full of determination, and we just wanted to come down here in support of the other couples who are also wanting to get married and see if we can't change her mind.
Eventually, a county judge arrived at the courthouse with an order mandating clerk Tammy Hines and her office begin issuing marriage licenses.
My concern with the software that the state of Indiana has for us to use has a man and a woman. And so there were some concerns about the legalities of us altering that document.
But after receiving the order, Hines said her last concern was met, and her office began issuing licenses.
And Attorney General Greg Zeller's office is assuring clerks they will receive notification as soon as his office hears whether his request for a stay has been granted. While weddings, as we just saw, can take place in courthouses instead of churches, and ceremonies can be performed by a county official instead of a minister, marriage is often tied to religion, and the judge's recent ruling will likely have an impact on many churches. To talk with us more about the religious and societal implications of these same-sex marriages, we're joined by Greg Wallace. He's the director of Hope and New Life Ministries in Beech Grove. Thanks for being here with us today, Greg. We appreciate it. So if you could just begin by talking about what are your primary concerns if same-sex marriages are allowed to continue?
In terms of their impact on the church, my concern would be that as the government continues to foist itself in having an impact on this issue, it will continue to force the church in a direction that is unbiblical and in a way that it doesn't want to go, that it shouldn't have to go. And what will happen is that we will see the government begin to impose its own authority on what the church really is already free to do, and that is to decide for itself to move in a biblical direction in how marriage should be defined.
Now, the head of the American Family Association, Micah Clark, says that we need to maintain the traditional definition of marriage between one man and one woman because that institution is based on history, and we have some tape from him.
Marriage is something that has always been recognized as the union of men and women for the best interests of children, and we hope that the courts will recognize that states have an interest in what marriage is and what marriage is not, and if it's a free-for-all or an unraveling to what anybody desires it to be, or if it's what we've always understood is an institution that serves the best interests of society through the unique needs and the unique differences between men and women, both of which are important to society.
There are a lot of people who hold that view. And do you think if these same-sex marriages are allowed to continue to go forward, do you think our view of people's role in society will change?
I don't think they'll change in terms of society per se, because society is always in flux. And I don't think we can say, well, because of this, that will happen. You know, I think we can just kind of suck it in, tough it out, and hope for the best when it comes right down to it. But I think the concern that we hold as Christians, and Micah Clark is a longtime friend of mine. I just have all the respect in the world for him. And I talked to him before he even came down to do this. But I think the concern that we have, insofar as the church is involved, again, is that the church will lose its authority to define how this issue has an impact on the family, and in turn how the church can have an impact on a lost and on a fallen culture.
Okay, well, we appreciate you so much for coming on. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but thanks for adding your perspective.
Thank you.
Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. The Attorney General is asking for a stay on same-sex marriages. If it's granted, what implications could it have for newly married couples? We'll ask a legal expert. And we'll update you on other stories making headlines this week, right after this.
People are looking for more light and less heat. Washington Week viewers are going to get it straight ahead, and that's what they count on us for. When we do these road shows, it not only helps me, but it helps all of our panelists to find out what is really on people's minds. We want to let you know what the information is, and then you decide what you want to think. That's what I think is unique about public broadcasting. There's nothing else like it out there.
I'm Bill Moyers. I was coming up out of the subway the other day when a fellow stopped me and said, "I don't like what's happening in the country, but there's nothing I can do about it." I told him I don't buy it. There's a lot you can do. First, get the facts, and then get involved with other people who are trying to change things. Start with Moyers & Company and take it from there. Could be the best hour you spend this week.
Friday night at 11.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Sarah Whitmire, in tonight for Joe Wren. There's uncertainty about whether a judge's decision this week to overturn Indiana's same-sex marriage ban will stick. It was a chaotic scene in many clerks' offices around the state this week as couples heard the news and rushed to get married. And the news caught many people off guard.
I was standing in the middle of a local store getting my lunch, and I got a text and I started crying. It was so moving. It was like the air changed. It became sweeter. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm a full citizen in my state now. And so even though I knew it was coming, it was still surprising how meaningful it was in that moment when it was real.
Now, couples know there's a chance a judge may approve Indiana Attorney General Greg Zeller's request for a stay until the Supreme Court can weigh in on the case. Indiana University Maurer School of Law professor Deborah Widiss joins me now to discuss the potential stay, Supreme Court involvement, and what this can mean for same-sex couples who've already gotten married. Quickly, before we get into the heart of our discussion, just following up on the last conversation we had in the show, if you could differentiate between civil marriages, religious marriages, and what the implications of the ruling.
Sure. So I think that's a really important point to clarify. So the ruling just applies to civil marriages. That's what the state must recognize. Is churches can still make their own decisions about whether or not they will grant whether or not they'll celebrate a same-sex marriage in accordance with their own doctrine and their own beliefs.
If you can sort of read into your tea leaves here, do you have any idea how long this window might stay open where same-sex couples can get married?
It's hard to say. I mean, it could be that the appeal will progress without a stay ever being issued, or it could be that a stay would come down any day now.
In some of the other states, it's been relatively soon.
Usually
right?
it's relatively quick.
Okay. So what is the legal situation like in some of these other states where same-sex marriage was legalized and then a stay was issued?
So Utah is, there was I think 17 days during which couples could get married, and then a stay was issued. And Utah is taking the position that the state will not recognize those marriages, but the federal government is recognizing those marriages. And I would think that the same thing might happen here if a stay is issued.
Then what does that really mean to the people involved in this?
Well, they're still legally married. The state is just not treating them as married, but if they leave Utah and go to a state that does recognize same-sex marriage, they have a marriage.
But in Indiana, they potentially wouldn't receive the benefits a married couple would receive.
Correct.
Okay. I know there are, what, more than 1,000 benefits,
right.
But can you sort of talk about just a couple of the major ones that married couples get now, same-sex married couples would get?
I mean, basically, it puts in place a default for recognizing a relationship that matters. If you die, who's presumptively your heir? If you get sick, who presumptively can make decisions for you? How the government treats you as a unit when you file your taxes, who you can take time off from work for to take care of. You know, so kind of a whole host of different kinds of rights and benefits.
And some of the folks we've talked to, I mean, they've been together for decades. You can understand their rush to get married, but would you urge them to wait? I mean, people are still doing it.
You know, I think that it's important that couples understand that they might be in some kind of legal limbo, but if their hearts are moving them to get married right now, then, you know, I think that couples have waited a long time. They just need to know that there might be some uncertainty in the future.
Thank you so much, Deborah.
Thank you for having me.
And now for other news making headlines, we're going to go over to Alex Dierkman, who has an update on this week's top stories.
Thank you, Sarah. The Environmental Protection Agency has the authority to limit the amount of greenhouse gases companies can produce, but it can only do so if the company is already required to get permits for other pollutants. That's the decision the U.S. Supreme Court issued Monday. Both state officials and environmentalists are calling the ruling a partial victory. The state of Indiana joined 12 states in suing the EPA, alleging the agency overstepped its authority when it placed new standards on greenhouse gases. Indiana's Attorney General Greg Zeller says the court's opinion agrees with that argument. Sierra Club attorneys say because the ruling is narrow, it will not affect the EPA's other proposals to cut greenhouse gas emissions. A medical doctor is being tapped the head of the state's Family and Social Services Administration. Governor Mike Pence named Indiana State Medical Association President John Werner the new head of the FSSA. Deborah Minot announced last week she would be stepping down from the post after a little more than a year on the job. The decision came as the state seeks federal approval for its healthcare expansion plan known as HIP 2.0. Kokomo's mayor says the city is not being negatively impacted by the recent General Motors recalls. The company has recalled about 20 million vehicles this year, and this week it recalled another 30,000 sedans with defective airbags. Kokomo is home to a Chrysler and GM plant. Mayor Greg Goodnight says he's been talking to GM officials and he isn't worried.
As far as our larger manufacturers, they do, I think, a very good job of communicating with either myself or our economic development department and keeping us abreast of anything that's going on. So as long as they don't call me, I sleep okay on that, at least with that part.
Nearly 1 in 5 residents in Kokomo works in the auto industry. The National Athletic Trainers Association is issuing guidelines to help coaches and athletes prevent heat exhaustion. The Trainers Association is recommending coaches create plans to help athletes acclimate to the heat gradually over a period of 7 to 14 days. During practice and competition, the group says coaches and event organizers should plan rest breaks to match the environmental conditions. At the USA Youth Outdoor Track and Field Championships in Bloomington this week, coaches were already putting some of those recommendations into practice by having their athletes rest in the shade when they weren't competing.
The most important thing in terms of why they're here in the first place is so they can perform well. If you're keeping yourself hydrated enough to perform well, you're not going to have difficulty with just being out in the heat.
Coach Stitz says most of his fellow coaches try to stay up to date with the latest research and take precautions to keep their athletes safe. And Indiana University baseball coach Tracy Smith is leaving the Hoosiers after coaching the team for nearly a decade. Smith is credited with making IU's baseball team a national contender. He led the Hoosiers to the university's first ever College World Series appearance in 2013. And that same year, he was also named the Big Ten Coach of the Year. And Sarah, on Twitter, IU baseball fans are not happy with the coach leaving. Take a look at some of these tweets. Tammy Klein says she was hoping the news of Smith's hire was a joke. She writes, "So sad it's not. Best of luck, coach. You've left big shoes to fill." And IU basketball coach Tom Crean also joined the conversation. He writes, "Tracy Smith is one of the finest coaches I've ever met. It was an absolute honor and privilege to work side by side with him."
And Smith is headed to Arizona State, which has just an amazing program.
Well, he will be very missed here, I'm sure.
Obviously, by some of those tweets you were reading, people in the community not too happy, but 5 national titles at Arizona State, that would be a hard job to walk away from.
Yes, it would be.
Okay, thank you, Alex.
You're welcome.
And that is the end of our program, but our work continues online as we cover the news in Southern Indiana throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by the following. Indiana University's Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research, presenting Security Matters, with tips for improving online security in 3 minutes or less. Main Source Bank, headquartered in Greensburg, Indiana, offering products and services to fit every stage of life. More information at mainsourcebank.com. Main Source, life needs a great bank. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Smithville Communications, serving Southern Indiana with high-speed fiber gigabit internet. Smithville Fiber Gigabit Technology. Tap the power.
And by WTIU members. Thank you.